It's 6 o'clock and we begin with breaking news. The King will be resuming public duties after receiving treatment after his recent cancer diagnosis. Buckingham Palace says this evening that his treatment will continue, but doctors are pleased with the progress that the King has made so far. Well, the Palace also have released this evening this photo along with the announcement taken the day after the King and Queen's 19th wedding anniversary. Well, the statement says His Majesty the King will shortly return to public-facing duties after a period of treatment and recuperation following his recent cancer diagnosis. To help mark this milestone, the King and Queen will make a joint visit to a cancer treatment centre next Tuesday, where they'll meet medical specialists and patients. This visit will be the first in a number of external engagements His Majesty will undertake in the weeks ahead. In addition, the King and Queen will host their Majesties, the Emperor and Empress of Japan, for a state visit in June at the request of His Majesty's government. As the first anniversary of the coronation approaches, their Majesties remain deeply grateful for the many kindnesses and good wishes they've received from around the world throughout the joys and challenges of the past year. Buckingham Palace went on to say, as the first anniversary of the coronation approaches, Their Majesties are deeply grateful. Let's join our royal correspondent Laura Bundock. She's outside Buckingham Palace for us. Laura, the Palace have described this as a milestone, and it seems that way, doesn't it? The clear suggestion being the King's treatment is going well.
Certainly, and that's the news coming from his medical teams as well. After what has been an incredibly difficult few months, we have a piece of positive news from the Palace, and certainly the kind of news the King will be wanting to share. The official line from the Palace is that he is greatly encouraged with the news that he can now return to public-facing duties, but speak to his team on the ground here and they will tell you he is chomping at the bit to get back to business. Don't forget his constitutional business, the official duties, the red boxes, the audiences, they've all continued, but very much behind the scenes. So what we will see from next week is a return to those public-facing duties that the King enjoys so much. He knows from his late mother's mantra, you have to be seen to be believed as monarch, and that is something he holds very close to him. I think we had a hint and a sign that this might be happening at Easter when we saw the King and Queen go and meet some of the crowds who'd gathered outside St George's Chapel in Windsor. He was clearly delighted to be able to shake their hands, to hear their well wishes, which, as we know, have meant so much to him over the last few weeks. Remember, it was only just over 11 weeks ago that I was stood here with news that the King's cancer diagnosis, and here we are now with a positive step forward that he can return to some public-facing duties.
Yes, and I guess those public-facing duties will increase or diminish as the health of the King continues. It'll be a decision taken by him with his doctors.
Absolutely. I mean, it's very clear, speaking to the Palace, that the medical advice has been right from the start that he shouldn't be allowed to take part in anything that's public-facing due to the risks to him while he was undergoing the treatment, while he was recovering from the treatment as well. But the news now from those medics is that they are sufficiently pleased with the progress he's been making, that they remain positive about his recovery and very encouraged, which is why the decision has been taken that he can now get back to work. As I say, the work has been going on behind the scenes at Buckingham Palace, but it is the out and about side to his role that has had to be put on pause. We've seen other members of the family, obviously other senior royals, stepping up while the King hasn't been able to get out and about as he would have liked. But now it'll be him himself, and that very personal and poignant first engagement next week to a cancer treatment centre where him and the Queen will meet patients, will meet the staff who have been going through and understand what the king has been going through himself. All along we've been told that by going so public with his diagnosis, by announcing it in this unprecedented way, if you like, he has wanted to try and raise awareness, to try and encourage other people to get themselves checked. And, you know, similarly to when we heard the Princess of Wales's announcement that she too had cancer, she wanted people to know that they are not alone. So that very much the feeling. But I think behind all this, we are being reminded that while this is good news, it is positive news, it is not the all clear yet. The king is still undergoing regular treatment. His engagements may have to be tweaked along the way. They may have to be adapted as and when the situation arises. But I know that his team at Buckingham Palace will be looking very carefully at them. They will be managing and planning these engagements to reduce and minimise the risk to the king as he, as I say, continues his recovery and continues the treatment too.
Yeah, Laura, in the last few moments, the Prime Minister has put on social media the very short message, brilliant news to end the week, exclamation mark. Many people, Laura, will be wondering which engagements he'll be involved in. Are there any specifics at all? What about those fixed points in the royal calendar? I'm thinking about Ascot, D-Day commemorations, garden parties. Any detail?
His birthday parade, trooping the colour, that big balcony moment. These are all, you know, the staples, if you like, of the royal calendar. The royal year is always meticulously mapped out, isn't it? We just don't know at the moment. And I think, although we have a lot of information and we have this bit of news that the king can return to some of his public-facing duties, bigger decisions about the likes of garden parties, Royal Ascot, trooping the colour, aren't going to be made yet, and they will continue to review his situation. I've been speaking to an oncologist a little earlier today who told me that when a medical team assesses a patient and how well they're doing with the treatment, they tend to look at three things. Firstly, how well is that person in themselves? How are they feeling? Do they feel they've got the energy, the ability to go out and about? And then two other things. They'll be looking at various tests, blood tests, and they'll be looking at scans as well. All that information will feed together before taking a decision, and I'm sure that will be ongoing as the king resumes his work. It has been a long time for him to be off work for so long, and speak to those who know him, they will tell you he is a workaholic. He is not someone who likes to be sat around. I was speaking to a member of his team a little earlier who told me, look, if you didn't know the king had cancer, you simply wouldn't know, because in himself he feels perfectly capable. But while he's been undergoing this treatment, the medical advice has been to reduce the risk to himself. He was best to stay behind closed doors. But, you know, we've seen him, haven't we? The audience with the Prime Minister unusually filmed for the first time. We've seen that he wants to show us that he is doing okay. And this is another, as the palace puts it, milestone moment for him.
OK, Laura, well, do stay with us. We'll also be speaking to an oncologist in a few moments' time. But first, let's bring in Sky News royal commentator Alistair Bruce, who's joining us from Edinburgh. Alistair, very welcome, this news, isn't it? Do you get the sense this is being driven by the king, that it is him saying now is the time is right for me to do more?
I expect it's being driven by the doctors who are responsible for making sure that the king's recovery is steady and permanent. And the thing about cancer is that, you know, you really have to respect it all the time. And I think that with the guidance that the doctors have given, the king has been able to make this announcement now. And it means that the palace can start to make a proper plan for the king's events during the whole of the summer and going on into the later parts of the year. And the king has been looking forward to really putting his back into the work of his role. And ever since his coronation, the anniversary of which we approach, he has wanted to do that. But of course, cancer has prevented him to a large degree. And in every respect, because of that, he's been held back. So I think for now, we know that he is coming back. He will, in each case, with each engagement, the decisions will be taken, the degree to which he gets involved with the public and interfaces. But hopefully that steady progress will continue. Of course, you know, with certain setbacks that can happen, the important point is that the palace can draw him back for particular events and or maybe alter how they are carried out. But the bottom line is the king is looking forward to returning to this, and also looking forward to a very specific event, which, as Laura was saying, is the arrival of the Emperor and Empress of Japan later in the year. And that's key business for Britain, particularly with the relationships in a difficult time around the world, and to develop those links to Japan. And I know that the king will have wanted to be ready and able to contribute his part at that point.
Yes, I was going to ask you about this, because are state visits stressful affairs, do you think, for the monarch, or is it fairly routine? He must feel that it's something that is manageable for him.
Well, a state visit is really the king interacting with the emperor. And in the background, all those people who make decisions in the United Kingdom about trade, who deal with defence, and all the other organisations to meet in the background and use the catalyst that the soft power of the king and the emperor being together can provide. And, you know, the king loves getting in amongst people. And part of the process of the state visit will be, yes, there are some key events. And I'm sure that in the process of dealing with his cancer, he will have been tired by some of the different things that he's had to go through, because I think the treatments are in themselves quite challenging. But the king is very energetic in himself, and we're hearing, as Laura was underlining, that the palace takes the view that, you know, he has a great deal of energy, and, you know, it's been a great disappointment for him that he's had to stay very much behind closed doors and not interact with people for the benefit of the United Kingdom and all those who live within it.
Yeah, we're just watching footage of the King and Queen on walkabout, and we know King Charles does love meeting the public and spends a great deal of time just slowly going along those lines, greeting people, making sure that he talks to children, shakes hands. It is wonderful to see, and of course he will be delighted going back to that. And Alistair, you talked about him being tired, and of course cancer treatment is very tiring. What are you hearing about his general mood, how he is feeling?
Well, I think he'll be much cheered by the fact that the doctors have given him a degree of a go-ahead, and that, you know, the 50% role of his task as sovereign is to be out and about and playing his part in national life. And that being prevented to him has been aggravating. And he's a person who likes to be active, likes to be doing what he's challenged most to do. And I think that for him, his reign has had such a false start because cancer got in the way. But I mean, anybody who has had cancer in their family or who has faced it themselves knows what a clobbering thing it can be in terms of setting back and changing lifestyle. But the king has been able to carry on doing his proper duties as sovereign in meeting people here and there where he can, but with the support of the royal family, still reaching out much, much more broadly. But at the same time, the fact that he's being given more leeway by those who have been dealing with his treatments, all the cancer specialists that he's been lucky enough to gain support from, that's tremendous news for him. And I'm convinced that his mood will be hugely lifted by that. And I'm sure the Queen, too, will be delighted that he can now come out of the palace and play a part as king and be the leader that he has been destined to be, and to do it in his own way.
Yeah, as the Prime Minister says, brilliant news to end the week. Alistair, Sky News Royal commentator, thank you very much for the moment. So the breaking news this hour, His Majesty the King will shortly return to public-facing duties after a period of treatment and recuperation following his recent cancer diagnosis. And on Tuesday, the King and Queen are going to make a joint visit to a cancer treatment centre. Well, as well as that statement, a new photograph has been released. You can see it here. The King certainly looking in great spirits. This photograph taken in the Buckingham Palace garden. Let's bring our royal correspondent Laura Bundock back in. It is a great photo, Laura. What more do we know about it?
We know it was taken here in the gardens of Buckingham Palace quite recently on the 10th of April, the day after the couple had celebrated their 19th wedding anniversary. And I think this picture tells us a lot, doesn't it? It portrays the very positive message that I think the King is very keen and happy to share today, that he can return and can resume some of his public work. His role within public life is so important to him, and it's been on pause ever since his cancer diagnosis. We haven't seen him out and about in public this year. We did get that hint, didn't we, at Easter at the outside St George's Chapel in Windsor, when he went to greet some of the crowds who had gathered to wish him well. And you could see how much that moment meant to him at that point. But clearly this was a decision that he couldn't take alone, that it was on the advice of his doctors, who took into consideration a number of things when they decided that they were sufficiently pleased with his progress, that he'd made good progress so far, and that it would be okay for him to return to public life. It is not a full calendar of engagements we're told he will be undertaking, and there will be obviously extra planning and management of the engagements to try and minimise and reduce the risk to the King while he continues the cancer treatment. That hasn't stopped yet. He will be continuing his treatment. But, you know, as I've been saying, the official line is he's greatly encouraged with this news. But speak to anyone who works with him and they will tell you he is thrilled. He has been chomping at the bit to get back to work, and that is what we will see starting next week, when him and the Queen quite poignantly visit that cancer treatment centre.
Yeah, it's going to be a big day, isn't it, for the King and indeed the general public as well, seeing him out and about for the first time in many weeks. Many people will be wondering if this cancer treatment centre has had anything to do with his treatment. Do we know?
No, we're told it hasn't actually. Remember the details about the King's cancer. We don't know what kind of cancer he has, and we don't even know what kind of treatment he's been undergoing. And we certainly don't know where he's been having this treatment, other than that it won't be the centre that he will be visiting on Tuesday. I think there are a couple of reasons why some of this information has been withheld. The obvious one is that it is, of course, private, personal medical information. He doesn't have to share that, and this is a very new step he's taken by being so open with the diagnosis. But I think secondly, there is a sense that by not being too specific about his cancer, he can speak to more people. He can speak to anyone who is themselves undergoing cancer treatment or helping support a loved one with cancer treatment. So I think the specifics I don't expect to be released at any point, but certainly when it comes to where he's been treated, it isn't the centre he'll be visiting, but no doubt he will meet people who he has met similar medical teams along the way himself, and of course be able to speak and relate more to the cancer patients that he will be meeting on that engagement on Tuesday. As for the rest of his calendar, the royal calendar is packed, isn't it? This time of year especially, but beyond that incoming state visit of the Emperor and Empress of Japan, which had to get postponed because of COVID, we don't really know the details yet. There is no long-term kind of announcement being made, and I think the simple reason is, while of course big events are being planned for, they're taking things day by day at the moment, that this is a sort of step by step, and his medical team will be wanting to check that sort of the calibration of his engagements is right, that he's not taking on too much too quickly. We know he's keen to get back to work, but he will have to pace himself, won't he, as with anyone who returns to work while undergoing a treatment for cancer. So I think there will be a careful management in the coming days and weeks, we will see. But certainly this is positive news. It has been this really difficult time, not just for the King, but for the wider royal family, once you think about the Princess of Wales's own treatment for cancer as well at the moment. So this a small bit of good news.
Yeah, of course. And as you say, nothing can be confirmed or guaranteed when it comes to those public engagements. All plans, of course, must remain subject to medical advice given nearer the time. Flexibility will be needed. Laura Bundock, outside Buckingham Palace for us. Thank you for the moment. Let's bring in Dr. Carol Sikora, a consultant oncologist. Good to have you with us. A return to work for the King. You must welcome this news.
It's very good news. I mean, cancer patients are all different, have different types of cancer, and they behave differently to the cancer. So the recommendation that it at least resumes partial duties is excellent news. It means that the cancer is under control. As we've heard, we're not the type of cancer and the treatment he's had and where it's had has not been disclosed. That doesn't matter. He's going back to work, which means things are going the right direction. He'll be carefully followed up with scans and maybe other investigations. And, I think the outcome will be great. We've been told it's not prostate cancer, which obviously had a prostate operation, but it was discovered at that time. We could speculate. We're asked not to speculate, and that's fair enough. It's a private matter. But it is really good news.
Some may worry, of course, about him mixing with the public, opening himself up to catching a bug when his immune system, I guess, may be depleted. But I suppose that's another good sign about his condition, that he can mix with the general public now, and the doctors are happy for him to do so.
Absolutely. And the biggest enemy for cancer patients, bacteria-wise, are the ones we have in our own skin and in our mouths, natural bacteria that just exist. And they're the ones that cause trouble in immunosuppressed patients, people that have had drugs or other types of cancer treatment. So mixing with the public will be fine. He'll be shaking hands, as always. When you see the lovely pictures of him going down the crowd, he'll be doing the same thing again.
And psychologically, for cancer patients, to know that you are on this step to recovery, you're taking this step back to normal life, for your mental health, it must be so important.
It must be. And, he's had a very busy life. Sure, it's a sort of strange type of job to have, but he's done it extremely well. And when we look at the future, getting back to it is the best psychological break you can have. It's better than sitting there having counseling or aromatherapy or massage. Just go and do what you've done before. That's what I tell all my patients. It's the best treatment. Whether it doesn't have to be a job. It could be looking after grandchildren. It could be a family. Just getting back to some sort of normality. Doing what you like doing and what you're good at is the best therapy out for the mind.
And just finally, he's visiting a cancer treatment centre next Tuesday with the Queen. His condition and Kate's, of course, you've mentioned that, really helping highlight the incredible work being done by cancer specialists and staff.
I think it's tremendous he's doing that, especially under the circumstances, because that's an easy one to cancel, to say it's a bit too close to the heart of the royal family at the moment. But he's going ahead with it. So I think that's tremendous. And it will help cancer patients all over the world to hear what's happened tonight. This broadcast will go global immediately. And it's just tremendous that it's happened this way.
It really is. Dr. Sikora, consultant oncologist, thank you very much. We've just heard from the leader of the Labour Party, Sir Keir Starmer. He says, delighted to see His Majesty looking so well and returning to public duties. On behalf of the Labour Party, I wish him and the Princess of Wales the best as they continue their recovery with the support of their families. A statement there from Sir Keir Starmer. To this news, if you're just joining us, His Majesty the King will shortly return to public-facing duties after a period of treatment and recuperation following his recent cancer diagnosis. Let's bring in Robert Hardman, Daily Mail writer and author as well. Your reaction to this news?
Well, like all the other contributors, I mean, I think it is very good news. I mean, I think we have to keep it in proportion. I mean, it's showing a very positive direction of travel. Clearly treatment is ongoing, and doctors' orders will have to be heeded, and sensible precautions, we have been told, will be made. But definitely, if we just think back to a couple of months ago, where we were then, where the King was pretty much in sort of seclusion, still performing all his constitutional duties, still attending to his red boxes, talking to the Prime Minister, but very much sort of locked away, if you like, first at Sandringham and then at some of the other residences. The fact he's now going to be resuming, as they say, outward-facing duties like the ones we see on the screen here, I mean, that is very much a step in the right direction.
And Robert, big duties as well. State visit, planning ahead, June. Their Majesties, the Emperor and Empress of Japan coming over. That's
a very big bilateral moment. I mean, the Emperor and Empress of Japan don't do many state visits. In fact, their first the Emperor's first engagement outside Japan was to attend the funeral of Elizabeth II. So that will go down extremely well in Japan. The King understands the importance of these state visits. These are the ultimate, if you like, sort of diplomatic compliment one nation can pay another. So he's determined to get that one right. But, there'll be other events that people will be looking to. I think lots of people will be looking in particular at two events, which we have yet to hear about. Obviously, the birthday parade is a sort of staple of the royal calendar, Trooping the Colour. And we'd also have the 80th anniversary of D-Day coming up on June the 6th. We don't know about those yet. I think what we're going to find is with all these major events, there will be a plan A and a plan B. And we will all be hoping that it's plan A with the King in attendance. But we have to steel ourselves to the fact that from time to time he won't be. But it's unquestionably the direction of travel is very positive.
It really is. Always good to get your thoughts and analysis. Robert, thank you very much. Robert Hardman, their author of Charles III, New King, New Court, The Inside Story. Let's just reiterate what that statement from Buckingham Palace said a little bit earlier. It said His Majesty the King will shortly return to public-facing duties after a period of treatment and recuperation following his recent cancer diagnosis. To help mark this milestone, the King and Queen will make a joint visit to a cancer treatment centre next Tuesday, where they will meet medical specialists and patients. This visit will be the first in a number of external engagements His Majesty will undertake in the weeks ahead. In addition, the King and Queen will host their Majesties, the Emperor and Empress of Japan, for a state visit in June at the request of His Majesty's government. As the first anniversary of the coronation approaches, their Majesties remain deeply grateful for the many kindnesses and good wishes they've received from around the world throughout the joys and challenges of the past year. Well, we're joined now by the royal commentator, Jenny Bond. Always good to get your thoughts, Jenny, on occasions like this, and reference in that statement to the last year, almost a year since the coronation. What a year it has been, but some good news as we head into the weekend.
Yes, how nice to be able to smile on television and say, yes, this is very welcome news and very welcome clarity, I think. We live in such an unsettled world, don't we? And where conspiracy theories seem to abound. In fact, I was woken up this morning by an Australian television station saying, we hear that the plans for the King's funeral are being updated urgently. Can you come on air? And I thought, hang on, this is unverified, unsourced. What are you talking about? And of course, it was the rumour mill swirling because the idea had got out that there was going to be some kind of announcement from the palace. So I think it's absolutely key now that the palace officials and advisors keep us informed as much as possible and as much as the King wishes about the progress. And today it was all good news, firm progress forward, lots of optimism. But we have to reiterate that the King still does have cancer and he is still having treatment, but he does seem to be winning.
He really does. And out of all those events that we're so used to every year, whether it's Ascot or garden parties, Trooping the Colour, which do you think he will be most keen to attend and be most keen to be seen at?
I think those where he meets members of the public, actually. I mean, he goes to Ascot. He's not the biggest enthusiast of that, but I think he will feel it very important to be present, as Robert was saying, for the incoming state visit. I mean, that's what it's all about. The head of state really does need to be there. And I think the trooping would be slightly odd, given that it is a birthday parade and it's his birthday parade, be slightly odd if the King wasn't there. His mother, the late Queen, missed only one, I believe, in her entire reign. That was when there was a national rail strike, except in the last year of her life when she came out on the balcony, but she didn't attend the parade itself. So that will be another big date in the diary, I think. But I think the diary will slowly fill up, but this is a gradual return to public facing duties. And of course, with the summer coming, it does mean that a lot of those duties and engagements can be outside, which is safer, even though your very interesting oncologist, Dr. Sikora, said that the biggest threat of infection and bugs is from our own skin and our own mouths, which I thought was great and that very interesting, and that in fact, it should be pretty safe for the king to go about and greet people, as he always has, enthusiastically, with lots of handshakes and poking and prodding, as he likes to do.
Yeah, he's no doubt been poked and prodded himself quite a lot over recent weeks as doctors try and get a handle on his health. But as we can see there, shaking hands and meeting the public is what he does enjoy doing so much. Jenny, thank you very much indeed. The statement saying, of course, their Majesties remain deeply grateful for the many kindnesses and good wishes they've received from around the world. Thanks for joining us.